Josh Williams has been suspended for the next NASCAR Xfinity Series race at Circuit Americas for his actions at Atlanta Motor Speedway. Project 91 is being planned to run multiple races and multiple drivers throughout the 2023 season, and Kevin Harvick is seizing a pretty big announcement. What's going on, guys? It's Daniel, and welcome back to our video. We got a ton of NASCAR and other motorsports stories to discuss here today on the channel. Let's go ahead and just jump straight into those really quickly. We're going to start by talking about JBL, as it was announced on Monday that JBL will be sponsoring Tricon Garage in 2023. They're sponsor Corey Heim for the upcoming race at Circuit Americas. They're sponsor Tanner Gray for one race in 2023. And for Taylor Gray, who returns to the Truck Series this weekend at COTA, he will have them for 7 races this season. Really exciting stuff to see JBL joining in. Of course, Tricon Garage, a new Toyota team. Really great stuff, and excited to see JBL will be sponsoring the team throughout the 2023 season. Really awesome stuff. And now we're going to jump on to the next story of today's episode, as we're talking about High Rock Vodka. It's a report by Adam Stern yesterday that High Rock Vodka has become the official vodka of Junior Motorsports. They're also going to sponsor Josh Berry at the Charlotte Roval. High Rock Vodka has been a pretty big loyal sponsor, I think, of Junior Motorsports for quite a bit of time, and they've been sponsoring Junior Motorsports cars over the last couple of years. So great to see them become official partner of Junior Motorsports. And now we're going to jump on to the next story of today's episode, as we're talking about Body Armor. As Body Armor and Adam Stern reported that Body Armor had Ryan Blaney star in a new ad for Body Armor with the new white box that they are going to start using. Body Armor, Ryan Blaney have had a relationship since 2017 season, so this is not a shock or surprise that this is happening. But really exciting stuff regardless. See that Body Armor and Ryan Blaney have been partnered now for quite a bit of time. A really cool ad, in my opinion. And now we're going to jump on to the next story of today's episode, as we're talking about Busch Beer. As it was reported by Adam Stern yesterday that Busch Beer is working with Women in Motorsports North America Group to launch a new NASCAR contingency sponsor for women drivers aged 21 plus, which will now include Hailie Deegan, by the way. Also, they will basically have a little bit of a prize pool they did. I think first we get about $50,000 to $60,000, and the prize pool continues on. Last year was a little bit of drama revolving around that. I know there were some issues revolving around that, so hopefully they actually come through this time and do a better job this time around than they did last time and actually pay the people that they are supposed to pay, because this was an issue last year. So hopefully they pay the female drivers in the sport, because this was an issue last year. So hopefully this issue will not become a thing in 2023. And now we're going to jump on to the next story of today's episode, as we're talking about OpTic Gaming. As it was announced yesterday that OpTic Gaming is going to sponsor Corey LaJoie this weekend at Circuit of the Americas. OpTic Gaming sponsored Corey LaJoie last year in 2022, when I believe they sponsored him at Richmond. OpTic Gaming, one of the biggest esports brands out there, one of the biggest gaming brands out there. Really excited to see them back working with Corey LaJoie, spending a lot of money on sponsorship. But really awesome to see OpTic coming back on board and sponsoring Corey LaJoie this weekend at Circuit of the Americas. Really exciting stuff. And now we're going to jump on to the next story of today's episode, as we're talking about Hailie Deegan. Now, Adam Stern put out a tweet yesterday about Hailie Deegan's deck lift from Atlanta Motor Speedway, which had 1,300 females who work in the NASCAR industry. This deck lift looks absolutely incredible. Hailie Deegan ran the Woman in NASCAR truck, with Advent Health partnering up with her on that. And they will partner with her, I think, maybe in the near future as well. I thought this truck looked absolutely beautiful, and seeing all the people that work in this sport, it's just so incredible to see that they did this, and I think it's absolutely phenomenal. Really exciting stuff, and happy to see the decklet. It looks awesome, and it looked really good when they did it. Very exciting stuff. And now we're going to jump on to the next story of today's episode, as we're talking about Josh Williams. Now, Adam Stern reported this yesterday from Sports Business Journal, reported that Josh Williams has more than doubled his falling since Saturday, when what happened at Atlanta Motor Speedway. Before the event, he had 12.3 thousand followers, and now he has 24.8K, according to when the tweet was released. I actually checked Josh Williams' Twitters last night, and I believe now he has over 26,000 followers on Twitter. Josh Williams is someone who I've had a lot of respect for in this industry, and to see him getting the recognition he deserves is absolutely awesome. And to see his following continue to grow on Twitter, it's been really growing exponentially over the last couple of days, and I do hope it continues to grow as big as it has, because he deserves it, and I'm really happy to see that his following is continuing to grow. Really exciting stuff for sure, and awesome to see his following continue to grow in a very big way. Really exciting stuff for sure, in my honest opinion. And now we're going to jump on to the next story of today's episode as we're talking about Argentina. As there was a report by Adam Stern on Monday evening that a province in Argentina says it hosted IndyCar CEO Mark Miles today to evaluate the possibility of bringing a race to Argentina. There's been a lot of talk and conversation about the possibility of IndyCar expanding to other countries and racing in other countries. They talk about racing up in Canada. Actually, they do race in Canada, Toronto, but expanding internationally. And now they're talking about going to Argentina. And now with the addition of Agustin Canapino coming in and racing IndyCar on a full-time basis in the number 78 for Juncos Hollinger Racing, it makes a lot of sense for them to start considering bringing in more drivers like that. And I think just seeing them talk about going and expanding Argentina would be very, very cool. I think IndyCar has raced in South America in the past, but it's been quite a bit of time since they raced in South America. So pretty cool to see Argentina considering it, and going to Argentina would be really, really fun overall. Glad to see that they are considering it, and pretty cool to see Argentina coming into play. Really exciting stuff for sure, in my honest opinion. And now we're going to jump on to the next story of today's episode as we're talking about Brad Keselowski. Now, NASCAR's Twitter page put out a really, really cool tweet about Brad Keselowski, and they noted that Brad Keselowski is the only driver to lead laps in every single NASCAR Cup Series race this season. This has been a pretty big year for Brad Keselowski. Brad Keselowski's having an incredible year so far. He currently sits 5th in the points at the moment. And for him to be the only driver to lead laps in every single race this season, of course, some of those have been green flag pit stops and kind of helped out. But still, Brad Keselowski this year has been a lot more competitive of a driver. And I think that Brad Keselowski, for the end of the year, could end up winning a race. I know it's early in the season and things can change, but I truly believe that Brad Keselowski is here to stay and is here to be competitive. And I think it's really awesome to see that he's been as competitive as he's been. Pretty awesome and happy to see that he's been competitive, and glad to see he's led laps in every single race this season. And now we're going to jump on to the next story of today's episode as we're talking about Ross Chastain. There was a tweet that was released from Jeff Gluck, of course, who works at The Athletic, noting that Ross Chastain is going to throw a watermelon off the 251-foot-tall observation tower and Circuit of the Americas. The reason he's doing this is to commemorate his first win, which came, of course, at Circuit Americas last year, about a year ago. Ross Chastain, of course, is someone who's become a daredevil. He made a incredible move at the Indy Road Course, basically kind of cheating his way to make a move. Then he basically made the wall ride move, and now Ross Chastain's doing more daredevilish kind of stuff. I think it's just so incredible to see what Ross Chastain has been able to do, and to see that he's going to throw a watermelon off a 251-foot-tall observation tower at COTA. I think it's just amazing. It's going to be a mess for sure when that watermelon gets thrown. Regardless, though, I think it's really exciting and great to see that he will be able to throw the watermelon off. I think that's some really exciting and very fun stuff that he's doing. In my opinion, pretty exciting stuff for sure. And now we're going to jump on to the next story of today's episode as we are talking about Brad Keselowski once again. As Jenna Fryer, who of course works, I believe, at the Associated Press, basically talking about Brad Keselowski, about him finally seeing results at Roush Fenway Keselowski Racing. Brad Keselowski kind of talk about the fact he's starting to see a lot more results over the last few weeks, and really since the start of 2023. We've been seeing Brad Keselowski really at the end of 2022, though, really starting to show some really great results as well on the racetrack. And I think that Brad Keselowski is only going to continue to have a better season. And to see that RFK is really finally starting to show results, this is the first time RFK has really been this competitive in such a long time. Like I mentioned a little bit earlier in the episode, Brad Keselowski currently sits in the top 5 in the regular season points. It does help that Alex Bowman and all those other drivers below the points have basically been out for a while, got 100-point penalties. But still, it's just amazing to see how Brad Keselowski's had such a great start to the 2023 season with great pace and speed. And overall, it's been phenomenal and incredible to see the great start to the season that this team has had. Happy for him and happy that RFK continues to have a really great year in 2023. And now we're going to jump on to the next story of today's episode as we're talking about Corey Roper. Now, we're going to talk about the Josh Williams suspension here in just a little bit, but someone has actually been reinstated back in the sport, and that is Corey Roper. Corey Roper got indefinitely suspended about a month ago due to a situation I'm not going to explain on here, but Corey Roper was indefinitely suspended due to some sort of issues. Now, Corey Roper, it's good to see he's back in the sport. Corey Roper, of course, the owner of Roper Racing, that Katie Cuddycut has driven for the last 2 weeks and will continue to drive this weekend at Circuit of the Americas. I'm really happy that Corey Roper's been reinstated back into the sport. It's really good for the sport. He's been reinstated back in. He'll be back out of the racetrack. Hopefully, the team can run really, really good and continue to run great. And I'm happy to see that Corey Roper has been reinstated back into NASCAR. Really awesome and good stuff. And now we're going to head on to the next story of today's episode as we are talking about Hendrick Motorsports. As Bob Pockers noted yesterday and tweeted out, the Hendrick Motorsports is expected to continue using the interim crew chiefs at Circuit of Americas this weekend. Obviously, the current crew chiefs at the moment the Hendrick Motorsports has on a full-time basis, that being Cliff Daniels, Alan Gustafson, Rudy Fugle, and then, of course, Blake Harris are all currently serving 4-race suspensions. They served their first of 4 races. They're getting suspensions out of the way early, and they will still be using the intern crew chiefs this weekend. That will be Tom Gray, who crew chief for Jordan Taylor this weekend. Kevin Menery will continue crew chief for Kyle Larson. Brian Campy will crew chief for William Byron, and we will see Gray guys once again crew chief for Alex Bowman this weekend. They'll be back in a couple weeks. They're getting suspensions out of the way, because if they do serve suspensions early, they can get it out of the way really sooner and much sooner. So good to see that for sure. It sucks that those guys are suspended for 4 weeks. We don't know when the appeal exactly is going to be. It may be next week. We don't know. We heard it might be this week, but it sounds like it could be a little bit farther down the road. Still, though, it's good to see that they're getting these suspensions out of the way as quick as possible, and good stuff. It's disappointing that they're out for now, but it's good to see at least they got some solid interim crew chiefs to come into play and work with the team. So interesting for sure, and we'll see how they perform in the future. And now we're going to head on to the next story of today's episode as we're talking about Colin Garrett. As it was announced on Monday that Colin Garrett is going to drive the 30 for On Point Motorsports this weekend at Circuit of the Americas. Colin Garrett has made select starts for On Point Motorsports in the past, and he's someone who has a lot of road course experience, which is the big reason why they're bringing him in to race this weekend. The team, of course, is a little bit lower in the owner's points, though they did end up having a top 15 with Ryan Vargas this past weekend at Atlanta. Still, though, happy to see that Colin Garrett is getting this opportunity. I think Colin will do a very solid and a really good job, and I'm excited to see that Colin Garrett had a great run, and hopefully he'll do good this weekend with the team at COTA. And now we're going to head on to the next story of today's episode as we're talking about Mason Filippi. As it was announced on Monday that Mason Filippi will drive the 34 for Ram Brothers this weekend at Circuit of the Americas. Mason Filippi has made select truck and Xfinity Series starts over the last year or two, has a lot of road course experience, has competed in IMSA, and has competed for the Ram Brothers Racing Organization, I believe, in the past. So it's not a surprise or a shock that he's getting this opportunity once again. I think Mason will do a very solid and a really good job. Hopefully with the team, they're a little bit lower on the owner's points as well. They've struggled this season, so hopefully Mason can do a good job with the Ram Brothers Racing team this weekend at COTA. And now we're going to head on to the next story of today's episode as we're talking about Logan Bearden. As it was announced on Monday that Logan Bearden is going to drive the 22 for AM Racing this weekend at COTA. Logan Bearden has made a couple starts for the AM Racing Organization in the past and mainly on the road courses. Logan Bearden has done decent. I think he's qualified every time into the race. I think he's had some solid top 20 and top 25 finishes in the past with the AM Racing group, but it's not a surprise they're bringing a road ringer in. Usually AM Racing brings road ringers in for the road course tracks, and it's really good to see that he's getting the opportunity once again. I hope he does a really good job with the team this weekend at Circuit of the Americas. And now we're going to head on to the next story of today's episode as we're talking about Cameron Lawrence. As it was announced on Monday that Cameron Lawrence is going to drive the 6.6 for NBM Motorsports in the Xfinity Series this weekend at Circuit of the Americas. Cameron Lawrence has been a driver who's competed in IMSA in the past. We have some IMSA experience, has, I believe, won a Roll 24 class, if I'm not mistaken. And Cameron Lawrence also is taking over Balthazar Leguizamon this weekend and has made some NASCAR starts in the past as he drove the 33 truck for Ram Brothers Racing last year in 2022. It's a really good opportunity for Cameron Lawrence. I think he'll do a really good job this weekend with the team, hopefully. And I'm happy to see Cameron Lawrence is getting the opportunity once again to drive for the team this weekend at COTA. And now we're going to head on to the next story of today's episode as we're talking about Balthazar Leguizamon. As it was announced yesterday on Monday that Balthazar Leguizamon will drive a 74 for Clayton Halmer Keller Racing this weekend in the Xfinity Series race at COTA. Now, Balthazar was supposed to make his NASCAR Xfinity Series debut with NBM Motorsports this weekend at COTA, but due to funding and sponsorship issues, this wasn't going to happen. So now he will drive for this team this weekend at COTA. This is a pretty good opportunity for Balthazar. I think he'll do an okay job, hopefully. Of course, they've had issues getting in the race 7014 has, so that's why they're bringing the road course stringer in, and hopefully Balthazar can do a really good and a great job with the team this weekend. I'm excited for him to get this opportunity. Hopefully he will do a good enough job with the team this weekend at COTA. Looking forward to see what he can do this weekend at COTA. I hope he can do a good job with the team. And now we're going to jump on to the next story of today's episode, as we're going to talk about the Saudi Arabian TV ratings for the F1 from this past weekend in Saudi Arabia. So according to Adam Stern, ESPN got a 0.74 rating and 1.523 million viewers for Sunday's F1 race in Saudi Arabia. It was it was up a little bit in rating and down a little bit in viewership from 2022, where it got a 0.79 rating and 1.445 million viewers. So it was up in the viewership category a little bit, and it's pretty decent viewership overall for Formula One. It's been up in both the viewership and now that kind of stuff. So it's really good to see the viewership is up and all CF1 continuing to grow a little bit. We'll talk about the NASCAR ratings here in just a little bit, but seeing the Saudi Arabian TV ratings do go up a little bit because F1 did struggle a little bit in the opening race a couple weeks ago. So F1 still is continuing to grow, and have over 1.5 million people watching on a Sunday afternoon is still a pretty good number on ESPN. If this happened on ABC, I'd imagine it probably be in the 2 to 2.5 million range which would have been really, really good. That being said, though, really exciting stuff to see F1 ratings continue to go up, and I think it's really good for the sport overall. Really good for the sport to see that the ratings continue to go up on that front and in that aspect. Pretty exciting stuff. And now we're going to jump on to the next story of today's episode, as we're talking about Mike Joy. Now, Mike Joy, basically on the Fox broadcast on Sunday, I really didn't talk much about this, but Mike Joy made a comment about the keyboard warriors, and it got a lot of attention on social media. Well, last night, Mike Joy released a statement saying that he's not planning to do say any more comments about the keyboard warriors, and kind of apologize on social media. Now, obviously, Mike Joy initially had some interesting response when it came to the keyboard warrior stuff, but basically his response was to kind of apologize a little bit for what happened in regards to that response. Now, look, I think Mike Joy, when you're a lead commentator for a race, I think it was a little bit funny for the first time. The second time was a little bit overboard for Mike Joy. And even though Mike Joy has been a little bit more, antsy and stuff with things he's been saying, the comments he's been saying, Mike Joy, in my opinion, is still one of the greatest lead commentators in NASCAR history. And one thing I'll give Mike Joy props for is that he will take constructive criticism, and they've actually tried to apply some of those things to the Fox broadcast. We saw a little more excitement this past weekend at Atlanta, and just some things that they can work on for sure at Fox, because Fox can absolutely do better. And Clint Bowyer can be a little more animated. We saw Clint Bowyer be animated at Phoenix when Kevin Harvick was trying to pass Kyle Larson for the lead. So there's things that the Fox broadcast can absolutely do better, and I think that Fox has a chance to improve themselves. And Mike Joy is still, even though I haven't agreed with some of the things that Mike Joy's been doing, I still think Mike Joy is one of the greatest lead commentators in NASCAR history and will be one of the greatest to ever do this. So I still have a lot of respect for Mike Joy. I don't agree with some of the stance that he's been doing, but still Mike Joy is one of the greatest ever, and I have a ton of respect for Mike Joy even to this day. So really great to see Mike Joy talk about this. I appreciate Mike Joy for kind of apologizing a little bit for some of the stuff he's been doing, but I also appreciate Mike Joy as one of the greatest ever, and he's still one of the greatest ever to do this league commentating stuff. And it's a very difficult job nonetheless, and for him to still be really as good as he is, he's not perfect anymore, and he's seeing a little more energy from Mike Joy, and I think Mike Joy still has time to prove that and get better. And I saw some excitement in Atlanta, so hopefully we can see more excitement and them continue to do things, because Fox has done some good things this year and had some bad things, but I feel like their coverage can get better as time goes on. And it started bad last year, got better as the year went on. I think Fox can still get better as the year goes on. I think they have a lot of time to do that. And now we're going to jump on to the next story of today's episode, as we're talking about the restart zones. As NASCAR announced yesterday on Tuesday that the restart zones for Circuit Americas are going back to the old 2022 restart zones. One of the reasons why they're going back to the 2022 restart zones is because the drivers have asked NASCAR to go back to the old restart zones from 2022 that they ran in 2023. So remember, for the first 5 races of 2023, they basically ran longer restart zones. One of the big reasons why is because of what happened at Auto Club. Auto Club, there was a big wreck, and drivers are really, really frustrated about the longer restart zones, the anticipation. They wanted them to go back to the old restart zones. Obviously, I don't think outside of that Auto Club situation, I didn't really notice anything different about the restart zones. But I do trust what the drivers are thinking on that front, that they think, hey, we should probably go back to the old restart zones that we ran in 2022 because it would make a lot more sense to do the 2022 restart zones than to do what we did in 2023. But I also thought 2023 restart zones, you had a little more anticipation. But if the drivers want to go back to the old restart zones, I have to respect that decision. And I do respect NASCAR and them on a decision on that front to go back to the old school restart zones. So they're going to run the 2022 restart zones this week in COTA, and imagine that will be a thing for the rest of the year. I expect that they're not going to be going back to the longer restart zones in 2023. They're going to stay with the old school restart zones from last year. And overall, just an exciting weekend coming up at COTA. And overall, good to see that they're going back a little bit to the old restart zones. I don't agree with everything NASCAR does sometimes, but I have no problem with them making a decision to go this way for 2023. Pretty good decision in my honest opinion. And now we're going ahead to move on to the next story of today's episode as we are talking about North Wilkesboro. Now, over the last couple of days, there's been some tire tests going on at North Wilkesboro. The Truck Series had multiple trucks out there on Monday, and then on Tuesday, you saw Tyler Reddick, Austin Dillon on Monday at Carson Ospar out on the track. On Tuesday, you had them out at the track as well. Carson Ospar put out a tweet basically saying 3 seconds of tire fall. And even Tyler Reddick and Austin Dillon commented yesterday saying that they don't want this track to be repaved. If they hold off on the repave as long as possible, the better it is going to be. It is really exciting to hear about the tire fall because it's going to make tire strategy, especially at that North Wilkesboro weekend for the truck race and the cup race, it's going to make the racing a lot more interesting because tire strategy could come into play. And the fact that there's a lot of tire fall is going to create some very interesting racing. But the fact that they've been testing at North Wilkesboro, if you would have told me a few years ago this was going to return to the schedule, I would have laughed at you because I didn't think that there was any sort of possibility for this track to return. But when they announced this last year that this track was coming back, I was so stoked and so happy. And now we're about 2 months away now from this race actually coming to reality and actually happening. We're going to have the first points paying race, I think, on May 20th or May 21st of this year. And I think it's just so exciting to see that this is actually happening. This track is returning. And the fact that we got 3 seconds of tire fall is going to make it so fun for the fans. And I heard the 3 seconds tire fall, I was so happy. And the fact that we are returning to this track in May in a couple weeks, it's like the Field of Dreams. And I think they've almost already sold out for North Wilkesboro. So it's just really exciting stuff overall for sure. See what's going on with North Wilkesboro at the moment. And I'm looking forward and stoked to see this. I think it's going to be really fun for the fans. And I'm pumped to see that North Wilkesboro is actually coming back. I'm actually really looking forward to it and excited to see the future of North Wilkesboro because it's exciting stuff what's going on with North Wilkesboro currently at the moment. And the fact we got multiple seconds of tire fall off is really, really exciting. And now we're going ahead to move on to the next story of today's episode as we're talking about Brad Keselowski. Now, Brad Keselowski had some interesting stuff that happened to him with him and Denny Hamlin I'm not going to get into, but after the race, Brad Keselowski got interviewed by the media, and Brad Keselowski actually gave a lot of credit to Joey Logano how he handled the race at Atlanta Motor Speedway, saying that Joey Logano completely beat him straight up, fair and square, and gave credit to Joey Logano. Obviously, Brad Keselowski and Joey Logano have had a little bit of history in the past. In fact, they had some issues at Las Vegas. But to see that there's really no issues between both of them is really good stuff. And Brad Keselowski giving credit to Joey Logano is great. And I think what it shows that Brad Keselowski is probably also gained a lot of respect to Joey Logano. In fact, I believe he actually went to victory lane to congratulate Joey Logano at the end of the race as well. Brad Keselowski has been seeing a lot of success so far to start 2023, and he nearly won this past weekend at Atlanta. He was not even mad. He was not even disappointed with the great run he had. He wished he would have won the race, but also at the same time, he's not even mad about what happened. So I think it's just exciting to see that Brad is showing a lot of respect to Joey Logano, and I think Joey Logano is really starting to become one of the all-time greats in the sport. I think you look at what Joey Logano has been able to accomplish, and he's becoming an all-time great. For NASCAR, at 32 career wins, at just the age of 32 years old, Logano has had already a lot of success in his career, and I think seeing Keselowski give him respect is phenomenal stuff because Brad is getting a little bit later in his career, and eventually in the future he'll be focused on doing more of the ownership side of things. But overall, very happy to see Brad Keselowski gave a lot of credit to Joey Logano when credit is due. I appreciate when people do give credit, and overall, really great to see him giving a lot of respect to Joey Logano. And now we're going ahead to move on to the next story of today's episode, as we're going to talk about the Atlanta TV ratings from this past weekend. As according to Adam Stern, Fox earned a 1.95 rating and 3.422 million viewers for Sunday's NASCAR race at Atlanta. That is down from a 2.36 rating and 4.003 million viewers in 2022. Once again, another about 600,000 viewer drop. Let's talk about what this means. Number one, it's not good to see the ratings drop, but there are, again, multiple factors to why the ratings are down. They would have been definitely down for sure if Chase Elliott was in the race, but again, Chase Elliott not being in the NASCAR Cup Series race is a major factor. Again, like I said a second ago, ratings would have probably been down from last year because of the newness and stuff, but this was down about 14.8% from last year, which still is not a good thing. I also think another factor why the ratings are down is because of Atlanta Motor Speedway. I think the new Atlanta, a lot of people probably got frustrated with it, especially from the Xfinity Series race who watched that race, and some people probably did not tune in. Plus, through the first two stages of the race, it was a little bit boring. It was not very interesting, and a lot of people probably tuned out near the end of the race as well. Now, one thing interesting is that the HUT viewership, the HUT viewership that we have seen, has gone up once again for this weekend. And unfortunately, though, F1 did beat NASCAR in the key demographic. I think NASCAR had like 800,000 viewers for the key demographic, which I think is a little bit up in the percentage-wise. But still, the Atlanta TV ratings are not great. But again, with Chase Elliott not being there, again, the Chase Elliott effect being a major factor why the TV ratings are down, I think that's going to be a common trait. I think until Chase Elliott makes his return, which again, we don't exactly know when Chase Elliott is going to make his return to the NASCAR Cup Series because he's still basically recovering from his injury that he suffered before the Las Vegas race happened. We know it's going to be a little bit before Chase Elliott makes his official return. Jordan Taylor is going to get the opportunity to race this weekend. And overall, when it comes to Atlanta Motor Speedway, Atlanta's TV ratings, I think it will go up a little bit more when Chase Elliott makes a return. But unfortunately, the ratings once again are down. It is disappointing news nonetheless. The ratings are down once again, but sadly, it's not a shock or surprise. The ratings are sadly down. Not a major shock or surprise. And now we're going to head on to the next story of today's episode as we are talking about Blaine Perkins. As it was announced yesterday afternoon that Blaine Perkins has parted ways with SS Greenlight Racing. Blaine Perkins had been driving the number 07 car for the last 5 weeks, and the results had not been there for Blaine Perkins. Blaine Perkins has struggled throughout the year and had not been running up front and had a terrible start to 2023. So that is one of the reasons why Blaine Perkins is parting ways with the team, sadly. So I don't know what he's going to be doing for the rest of the year. Maybe he goes to CHK Racing if they have that right available, because again, they're not going to have that right available this weekend. It's just disappointing to see that Blaine Perkins is not running with the team anymore. But Blaine Perkins has not really had the results since 2021 when he drove for Aric Motorsports. He got a stage win at Aric Motorsports a couple years ago, and he just has struggled over the last few years. Maybe he could find a way to get a ride here going forward, but it's just not been a great start to 2023 for him. So who is going to substitute for him this weekend? Carson Hocevar is actually going to substitute for him this weekend at COTA in the 07 for SS Greenlight Racing, meaning that if he can make it to the show as well, because I believe the 07 car is 37th in the owner's points currently at the moment, this means Carson Hocevar will make his NASCAR Xfinity Series debut. Of course, Carson initially was supposed to make his debut in the number 77 for Spire Motorsports at Dover, but now he's getting the opportunity to race at COTA. This is going to be a really good opportunity for Carson Hocevar. I think Carson Hocevar is an incredibly talented driver who can always get the best out of equipment, and I think Carson Hocevar will have a fantastic and a great opportunity here to be really competitive with the SS Greenlight Racing team. I think he's going to do a really good job. Maybe they go ahead and get other drivers the opportunity to drive the 07 car. Maybe even go back to 4 for a couple weeks and give Hailie Deegan the opportunity, maybe perhaps, because I think she deserves some starts in the Xfinity Series. But still, nonetheless, so this is a great opportunity for Carson. It's a shame what happened to Blaine Perkins, but overall, I'm not shocked or surprised. His performance just had not been there, sadly. I'm sorry, but his performance just had not been there this season and had not been a great start to the year for him this season. So happy to see that Carson's getting the opportunity. Disappointed for Blaine, but hopefully they can do much better now, and Carson can do a really good job with the SS Greenlight Racing team this weekend. I hope he can do a good job, and he deserves the opportunity, in my opinion, to drive for SS Greenlight. And now we're going ahead on to the next story of today's episode as we're talking about Ross Chastain. As this was announced on Monday, that Ross Chastain is going to drive the 41 for Nice Motorsports this weekend at Circuit of the Americas. This will be Ross Chastain, I believe, his second start of the 2023 season. Of course, you do have the restrictions where you can only run 5 races in a respective series that you're not declared for. Chastain probably going to be a driver who's going to be competitive for the win. Obviously did win in 2022 in the Cup Series race at Circuit of the Americas. So he does have that experience coming into play that is really going to help Chastain be very, very competitive. Plus, we've seen how fast Nice Motorsports can be, especially on the road courses. So I think that we're going to see Chastain be a very competitive driver this weekend. I think he's going to have a really good chance to get the win with Nice Motorsports this weekend, and I think he's going to have a good chance. I don't know if he will win because there's a lot of competitive people. We got Kyle Busch running. We got other drivers we're going to talk about in a second, but I'm very happy to see that Chastain is going to drive the 41 for Nice Motorsports this weekend at COTA. Looking forward to it and excited to see that he's getting the opportunity this weekend at Circuit of the Americas. And now we're going to jump on to the next story of today's episode as we're talking about Aric Almirola. As it was announced on Monday that Aric Almirola is going to drive the 08 for SS Greenlight Racing this weekend at Circuit Americas, taking over for Greg Galding this weekend at COTA. Now, one thing to note about Greg Galding is only missing this weekend. He'll be back next weekend at Richmond Raceway. But Aric Almirola now will get the opportunity to make his first Xfinity Series start since 2018 at Watkins Glen when he drove the 98 for the Curb Abogine team that Ross Racing was affiliated with. Aric Almirola, of course, has had a struggling start in the Cup Series this season, where Aric Almirola's best finish is a 16th place in his struggle throughout the season so far, sitting 27th in the points. And I think a big reason why we're seeing Aric Almirola get the opportunity is improve on road courses, because, like I said, Aric Almirola has struggled on road courses throughout his NASCAR Cup Series career. So this opportunity that he's getting at the moment is for him to get a lot better on the road course style of tracks. He needs to do better, and I'm glad he's getting the opportunity to race in Xfinity. I think he'll do a good job, and hopefully he can do very, very good this weekend at Circuit of the Americas. Looking forward to it, and hopefully Aric Almirola can have a fantastic run with SS Greenlight, which will have a Ross Racing Alliance for this weekend at Circuit of the Americas. Looking forward to it. And now we're going to jump on to the next story of today's episode as we're talking about Ty Gibbs. It's already been announced at this point, but Ty Gibbs is going to drive the 19 for Joe Gibbs Racing in the NASCAR Xfinity Series this weekend at Circuit of the Americas. Not sure how many races Ty Gibbs will be racing this year in the Xfinity Series. There's still a lot of races still available for that number 19 car. But this will be Ty Gibbs' first start since he won the championship last year at Phoenix in 2022. Now, last year, Ty Gibbs had an incredible season, and I expect that Ty Gibbs, even though he's kind of struggled a little bit in the Cup Series this season, though he did just score his first top 10 of the 2023 season in Cup and got his career best finish of 9th place, Ty Gibbs will be very competitive this weekend in the Xfinity Series. Granted, there's a lot of competition this weekend in the Xfinity Series race at COTA. You're going to have William Byron with Hendrick Motorsports, which that car is always fast. And, of course, you have A.J. Allmendinger, who's driving to sit in number 10 car in the Xfinity Series for Colin Racing as well. And he's won the last 2 straight Xfinity Series races at Circuit of the Americas. Still, I expect Ty Gibbs to be very, very competitive. I think you're going to see them give him a really strong car. And this 19 car has been fast, especially the last couple of weeks when Ryan Truex has driven in it. You just got to get a great driver to drive. No disrespect to the other drivers in this series, but I feel like that Ty Gibbs is someone who's going to be very competitive this weekend and will have a good chance to get it done. So I expect him to have a good chance to win, and I think he will be very, very competitive this weekend at Circuit of the Americas. I think he's going to have a really good opportunity and a great chance to get it done, and expect him to be competing for the win in the Xfinity Series race this weekend at Circuit of the Americas. I expect him to be competitive. And now we're going to jump on to the next story of today's episode as we're talking about Alex Bowman. As it was announced Monday evening that Alex Bowman is going to drive the 7 for Spire Motorsports for not 1, but for 2 races this season. He will drive at Circuit Americas this weekend, of course, getting back in the 7 truck that he ran last year. And he also is going to run at North Wilkesboro as well, joining multiple Cup drivers that have already been confirmed that will drive that Cup Series race, the truck race at North Wilkesboro. He'll be joining William Byron, who will drive the 51 for Kyle Busch Motorsports, and he will join also Chris Bell, who's going to drive the 61 for Hattori Racing. Now let's talk about Alex Bowman's chances for this weekend at COTA in the truck race. I think Alex Bowman is going to be really competitive for the win. He almost won this race last year. Kyle Busch and Stuart Friesen near the end of the truck race had some contact, and Kyle Busch was not very happy with Alex Bowman after the truck race. Kyle Busch had the lead, and they had contact, and Zane Smith stole the victory. So Alex Bowman is probably going to be someone competing for the win this weekend, and probably for both races, actually, that he's competing in. I expect that Alex Bowman will be going for the overall victory because he's been really strong when he's ran in the truck series, especially with the Spire Motorsports group. I think that Alex Bowman's going to have a really good opportunity here to be competitive, and I expect him to be competing for the win this weekend at Circuit of the Americas in the truck series, and probably the Cup race as well, considering he ran very good here last year in the Cup race. I expect that Alex Bowman to be very, very competitive. I expect him to be up front, and I think that we're going to see Alex Bowman have a fantastic run this weekend at COTA. Expect him to do good, and I think he'll be competitive this weekend at COTA. Now we'll go ahead and jump on to the next story of today's episode as we are talking about Derek Kraus. As it was announced yesterday that Derek Kraus will make his NASCAR Xfinity Series debut next weekend at Richmond Raceway, driving the number 10 for Colin Racing. Derek Kraus, of course, not running full-time in the Truck Series season, as last year ran full-time for McAnally Hilgeman, has only made one start so far in the 2023 season, driving a 20 for Young's Motorsports. This does seem a little bit awkward, though, considering this past week in Atlanta, Christian Eckes won in the old truck that Derek Kraus used to run. So it's a little bit awkward for this announcement to happen. And you look at Derek Kraus' success in the Truck Series, he really didn't have a lot of success, and you already see Christian Eckes having success in the number 19 for McAnally Hilgeman is a little bit awkward. But this is a great opportunity for Derek Kraus, and people are thinking, well, this is kind of out of nowhere. There were rumors last year going around that Derek Kraus might have ran full-time this season in the number 10, but he didn't have any sponsorship or funding to run the full season. This is a great opportunity for Derek Kraus, so I think Derek may run a little better in the Xfinity Series than he has ran in the Truck Series. Like I said, he kind of struggled in the Truck Series, but the Truck Series is not meant for everybody. Look at certain drivers like Hailie Deegan, for instance. In her debut, she finished 13th. I know that was SHR equipment, but this is a solid opportunity for Derek Kraus, and I don't think Derek Kraus is going to win, but I think Derek Kraus will be somewhat competitive, and this could be a tryout period for him to get more opportunities and more starts with Colin Racing, which I imagine he's being considered for more opportunities, maybe especially at the Chicago Street Course race and the other races that Cup drivers are not allowed to run in. But this is a good opportunity, though. I'm looking forward to seeing what Derek Kraus can do that next weekend at Richmond. I don't think, like I said, I don't think he's going to win because there's going to be a lot of competitive drivers in that field who are really good at Richmond, especially some of the junior motorsports cars. But I think Derek Kraus, nonetheless, is going to do a really solid job with the team this weekend. I'm looking forward to seeing him get this opportunity and happy to see that Derek Kraus has a chance to show what he's capable of. Some drivers are not meant to do great in trucks, and maybe he'll do really good in Xfinity Series, and hopefully he can come in there and prove himself and run fantastic this weekend. Not this weekend, next weekend at Richmond. Looking forward to that opportunity. And now we'll go ahead and jump on to the first of three major stories in today's episode as we're talking about Project 91. Now, Justin Marks was on SiriusXM NASCAR Radio on Monday afternoon and Monday evening with Dave Booty, and he says that Project 91 is going to run multiple races this year with multiple drivers. Obviously, Project 91 had talked about maybe running the Daytona 500 with Filippi Castroneves, but that did not go through. They're, of course, making their season debut this weekend in the 91 car for Kimi Räikkönen this weekend at Circuit of the Americas. The plan is for this team to run at all the road course races this season with multiple different drivers, but there is a possibility that Kimi Räikkönen might be making more starts with this team in 2023 as well, as Justin Marks did mention. Let's talk about potential candidates who could drive the Project 91 car this season. There's a multiple drivers at one point that have been rumored. First one, of course, Julio Castroneves. They tried to get him to run the Daytona 500, but the thing did not come through due to funding and sponsorship not coming through for Julio Castroneves. I would love for Julio to get the opportunity to race in NASCAR. He wants to race in NASCAR. He'd love to race in the future, maybe the 500 if they decide to run the Project 91 car in the future. But Julio Castroneves would be a great driver to bring in first. Second one, not Jensen Button. Jensen Button's running for RFK Racing. Another one, Marcus Ericsson. Marcus Ericsson has talked about wanting to run in NASCAR after he won the Indy 500. He was on SiriusXM NASCAR Radio after winning the Indy 500. And Marcus Ericsson would be a pretty good driver to bring in. What about Juan Pablo Montoya? Juan Pablo Montoya, I know he's ran in NASCAR in the past, but he's someone who can be very competitive in great equipment. And I think Juan Montoya would have a very good chance to be competitive in that car. And I think he would have a chance of winning. Sebastian Bourdais is another driver I've seen kind of like the tweets. Sebastian Bourdais is someone who's a legend in IndyCar. He would be a driver I would love to have come in and race. Daniel Ricciardo. Daniel Ricciardo has shown interest. He wants to race in NASCAR, so it'd be really fun for him to come to race in Project 91 car. And I think it'd be because I think he's shown interest in NASCAR, and I would love for him to come drive that car. Another driver I would love to see get an opportunity, maybe Sebastian Vettel. Sebastian Vettel almost ran the opening race in Bahrain, but he didn't run in Bahrain. But I think it'd be cool for him to come and race in NASCAR. I think what's so interesting about this Project 91 car is that we're going to see so many really awesome, great opportunities and opportunities of drivers from the international scene. And also Scott McGough would be another driver I'd like to consider. But one thing I like to see, what I love about this Project 91 car, is you get to see so many different drivers in combinations you never thought you'd get to see. And I think it's so cool that this is something that is going to be going on overall for the future. Just seeing Project 91 come into light and seeing the future of this coming through. I cannot wait to see what drivers decide to run and what races Project 91 decides to run throughout the year. They are expected to run all the road course races throughout the 2023 season. And I think it's just so cool to see that this is happening, and I think it's awesome for sure that this is actually happening, where you got a lot of drivers running for Project 91. We'll see what other drivers run, but Kimi Räikkönen and some other drivers that could run this car once again in the future of this season. And now we'll go ahead and jump on to the first of two major stories in today's episode, as we are talking about Kevin Harvick. Last night, Kevin Harvick put out a teaser basically teasing a potential big thing that was coming. Well, Kevin Harvick made a big announcement earlier today, just about 20 minutes ago. He announced that he is reestablishing Kevin Harvick Incorporated, and he is going to run in select Cars Tour races throughout the 2023 season, including at the Cars Tour race at North Wilkesboro. Obviously, there's been rumors about Kevin Harvick maybe running in the Cars Tour, considering he is now one of the co-owners of the Cars Tour. So this is not a big shock or surprise. He's one of the 4 Cars Tour owners. Him, Justin Marks, Dale Jr., and Jeff Bearden currently own the Cars Tour at the moment, and now he's going to get to compete in the Cars Late Model Tour. It's already been a big year announcements for Kevin Harvick as well. Of course, he is driving the 29 car for Stu Ross Racing, of course, in commemorative of running at North Wilkesboro in the final first return of North Wilkesboro, commemorating back to his 2001 win at Atlanta, and now that gets the opportunity to race in the Cars Tour. I think it's so awesome he gets to race in the Cars Tour. But the other thing, he is reestablishing Kevin Harvick Incorporated. The last time Kevin Harvick Incorporated, to my knowledge, had any sort of racing in any shape or form was basically back in like 2011 or 2012, before it basically that 33 became a Richards racing car. I remember Kevin Harvick Incorporated was around in the Xfinity Series and the Truck Series as well, and how competitive it was. And Kevin Harvick, I think, maybe won a championship and drove for his own team and got wins for the team. Tony Stewart won for the organization, and you saw a lot of drivers come in and drive for Kevin Harvick Incorporated. And Ron Hornaday, not to mention, won multiple Truck Series championships for Kevin Harvick Incorporated when they were around as well. Kevin Incorporated has for a long time basically been a management company, so it's just so awesome to see that KHI is back. It's been a long time since Kevin Harvick Incorporated has been around, and to see him back in the Cars Late Model Tour is great. And just see that Kevin Harvick, like I said, is competing in the Cars Late Model Tour and getting the opportunity to bring Kevin Harvick Incorporated back, resurrecting the team, and just bringing him back in the fold is amazing. And to see that he's going to compete in the Cars Tour, that's going to bring a lot of stock into it. And we've seen the Cars Tour grow over the last few years. Just a lot of drivers. We've seen drivers establish themselves in the Cars Late Model Tour. But overall, just like I said, seeing Kevin Harvick in the Cars Late Model Tour, and also bringing Kevin Harvick Incorporated back, is phenomenal. Now, obviously, North Wilkesboro has been confirmed for Kevin Harvick to run. Whatever races could have Kevin Harvick run. Obviously, he's talking about running some other Cars Tour races this year. We know he's going to run several. We don't know exactly how many he's going to run. But to see that Kevin Harvick now gets to have fun and race in this series he owns is phenomenal, absolutely incredible. And like I said, I'm looking forward to see that Kevin Harvick is competing in that series. It's going to be fun. It's going to be fantastic. And I'm looking forward to see that Kevin Harvick will compete in the Cars Late Model Tour. Really looking forward to that. And now we'll go ahead and jump on to the final major story of today's episode, as we are talking about Josh Williams. Now, yesterday I did a little video talking about this on the channel, but yesterday NASCAR announced that Josh Williams has been suspended for the upcoming race at Circuit of the Americas. Now, why has Josh Williams been suspended? Well, let's go back to what happened at Atlanta Motor Speedway. In the early portions of the NASCAR Xfinity Series race at Atlanta Motor Speedway, Kyle Weatherman had a tire go down, and Josh Williams got a lot of damage. Now, NASCAR had already had a lot of cautions. There was less green flag laps than caution laps. A lot more caution laps than the green flag laps. And they basically went back green, and Josh Williams had some Bearden on the car, and with how cold the temperature was outside Atlanta Motor Speedway, because it was very cold at Atlanta, the Bearden fell onto the racetrack, and after that caution came out, Josh Williams was told to park his car. Well, Josh Williams did park his car on the front stretch, walked out, basically gave the peace sign, walked back to the pit road, spoke to the media a little bit, said, what are they going to do? Fine me, actually the officials. Then what he said, what are they going to do? Fine me? Then NASCAR escorted him to the infield care center, and then basically after escorted him to the hauler to be spoken to by Director Way on, and was told to sit in the hauler until after the race. Basically watched the rest of the Xfinity Series race and had some pizza during that time. Then he came back out of the media center and basically talked to media, basically saying that he was a little bit frustrated and thought it was an unfair call that NASCAR didn't make, and basically said that he expects whatever NASCAR decides to do. So he's suspended for the upcoming race and basically has had a lot of support on social media throughout the week. The question is who will substitute for him this weekend. It will be Alex Labbe, who will drive the 92 in basically substitution for him this weekend. Now, obviously, Josh Williams did release a response yesterday respecting NASCAR's decision. He also has appreciated support that he has gotten over the last couple days as well. So let's talk about this a little bit when it does come to Josh Williams. In my honest opinion, I'm not surprised that Josh Williams did receive penalties. I expect Josh Williams to get penalties, but I think a one-race suspension is a little bit harsh. He basically stuck it to NASCAR. It's probably one of the reasons why he did get a suspension, but NASCAR told him to park it, and he did what he exactly was told to do. Maybe not sticking it to NASCAR probably wouldn't have helped, but in my honest opinion, when it comes to this Josh Williams situation, I think Josh Williams getting one race suspension is absolutely harsh. And we're going to go back to recent situations. 2 years ago at the Charlotte Roval, Chase Elliott had basically his back bumper came off the car and brought out a caution. And you know what NASCAR did? They did nothing. They did jack crap. Basically did nothing, and Chase Elliott got to contend for a championship because of that. Had Chase Elliott's back bumper stayed on, NASCAR black flagged him for him because they did not black flag Chase Elliott for that. That's where they're going to look at, and basically what I'm looking at is saying, how do you suspend Josh Williams for one race when you basically didn't suspend Chase Elliott for having a back bumper come off? Chase probably should have been suspended for that in that instance. So that's what's frustrating again. And it's a smaller team, too, not to mention, and NASCAR never usually enforces that rule. I go back to the Chase Elliott situation at the Roval Cup years ago, where they don't normally enforce the rule. So in my honest opinion, I think this penalty is a little bit too harsh. I think a fine would have been justified, and David Riggin and Denny Hill were willing to pay the fine, but now they're not going to pay a fine. I think it's another big reason why they suspended him and didn't get him a points penalty or that. But Josh Williams supports the decision. But again, I don't completely agree with the decision that Josh Williams got a one-race suspension. I think it's a little bit harsh, and NASCAR went overboard. And not to mention, a lot of those caution laps that happened early in that race were NASCAR's fault. They took 12 to 13 laps because the race direction was terrible at the beginning of the race. They basically took 13 laps of caution in the middle of stage one to clean up a 3-car pileup. That should not have taken that long to get done. So if you want to blame anybody on the race taking so long and frustrating, blame NASCAR for taking way too long to get it cleaned up and get everything fixed. So in my honest opinion, when it comes to this, I understand NASCAR decision, but I also think it's too harsh a penalty. In my honest opinion, it should have been just a small fine. I think the fact they suspended him was a little bit egregious, and it's not the same actions will happen with Bubba Wallace when Bubba Wallace right rear Kyle Larson down the straightaway last year at Las Vegas Motor Speedway. I don't think it's the same actions there, but Bubba got a suspension, which I think was completely justified. But Josh Williams literally got a one-race suspension for absolutely, I think it's a little, again, he got a penalty, and I thought penalties were coming, but I also think a one-race suspension on the Josh Williams stuff, I think is a little bit too harsh. I think a one-race suspension was a little bit unjustified on NASCAR's part because it is NASCAR's fault. They basically took forever to clean things up, and they were frustrated, I think, as well with how the procedure was going on and having a lot of cautions. But that Xfinity Series race was so bad, was so frustrating, and just, it was a bad race overall in general and a bad mark on NASCAR. The most memorable moment of the weekend was Josh Williams giving it to NASCAR. And I think we all support Josh Williams. We want to free Josh Williams. And again, it's disappointing news overall, but I'm not surprised by this news, sadly. It's just, I'm a little frustrated that NASCAR suspended Josh Williams for one race. I personally, like I said, would not have suspended for one race. I would have just given him maybe like a points reduction or maybe a fine, maybe like a $25,000 fine. That's where I would go with it. But in my opinion, I'm sadly not surprised or shocked about this penalty. So, that is for today's NASCAR news and motorsports news video. I want to thank you guys for watching. Please like, subscribe, hit the channel notifications on so you're notified when a video does go live on my channel. Follow me Twitter, Facebook, and Instagram, and support my Patreon as well. Links are below over that, and comment your thoughts below on today's video. Do you think Josh Williams should have gotten suspension or not? Let me know your thoughts in the comments below. And what are your thoughts about Harvick Incorporated actually returning? Let me know your thoughts in the comments below. Later today on the channel, I'll have another video on the channel looking at all the paint schemes for this upcoming weekend at Circuit of the Americas. Then tomorrow on the channel, we're going to have race picks for the Cup Series race at COTA. Then Friday, a NASCAR news video will drop on the channel. And then Saturday, we will have a special video on the channel, likely revolving around Kevin Harvick and the number 4 car. So anyways, like I said, I want to thank you guys for watching today's episode, and I'll see you guys next time for some more great, awesome NASCAR content and other motorsports content on the channel like this. Take care, everybody.